Do you want to know how you can make more money and embrace the future of selling in one fell swoop? Then this episode is for you. Hello, Sales Nation, and welcome to today's episode of the Salesman podcast. On today's show, we have Ankur Srivastava, and on today's show, we're diving into the future of selling, what that means for you, what that means for your bank account, and a whole lot more. So with all that said, let's jump in to today's episode. Ankur, welcome to the Salesman podcast.
Well, it's great to be here.
I'm glad to have you on, mate. I'm glad to dive into today's topic because I very purposely am going to lead with a bunch of crazy open-ended questions because I want to get your thoughts on this and I don't want to kind of put words into your mouth or color the conversation. So I want to look at the future of sales, the future of what the sales professional will become. But before that, I think it's perhaps worth tracking over where sales has come over the past 3-5 years or so, just to give a quick recap there for anyone who's been sleeping on this and has been getting comfortable as a sales professional, because I think there's a moment of change that's coming imminently, and your business, your product is going to, how to describe it, is going to double down on the rate that this is going to happen, I'm sure. So with that, give us a quick overview of any changes you feel that there's happened in the market over the past kind of 3 to 5 years till now, and then we'll look into the future in a second.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, it's great to be here. And, the change that initially came in and really inspired us was, if you look today just at the VC market, there's a ton of companies that are getting invested into. So for the first time ever, you have a high influx of new companies emerging. We looked at the numbers in 2015. I think there were 3,500 companies. The number grew to 5,000 the following year. And I estimate something like 6,500 new companies that are funded entering the new market. The one thing that's common across all those companies is that at some point, those companies will all need to have an enterprise sales strategy. Well, if that's all going to happen, then guess what? Everybody's using the same traditional method. And I use the funnel effect. And if everybody's reaching out to the same contacts within those same companies, those enterprises are about to get inundated more so than they are today with ideas and sales professionals reaching out to them to say, my product's the best. So we fundamentally knew that we had to change the game, and we had to do almost something outside of the traditional and bypass the entire industry completely. So that's the fundamental change that we're observing over the course of the last 3 to 5 years. And I think it's going to get accelerated over the next 1 or 2 years, even more so.
And we can immediately going off topic here because I'm super interested in this from an entrepreneurial perspective, but it'll be useful for the audience from a business acumen perspective. Is there an acceleration in new startups, a trend, a phase? Is it that entrepreneurship is just in vogue at the moment? People that would perhaps go into corporate roles are doing startups. Is that likely to change? Or do you think, and this is what I kind of believe, that society is now just so much more open because of the internet and the changes that are implemented through that there will be way more products, there will be more commoditization through kind of multiple small companies perhaps providing the same service that a big corporate would have held on to years ago. Is this shift perhaps from huge conglomerates into more of a VC-led startup world, something that's going to continue to move forward as far as we can kind of predict?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a little bit of peripheral on this. So if you look at, for the first time, what's happening is infrastructure is readily available. People are able to start building companies a lot faster. They're able to get to the end product a lot quicker through services like Azure, Amazon, and so on. So we know that infrastructure is now not a delay. The other thing that's happening is the traditional purchaser or acquirer of technology has been IT. And we know that IT is very quickly dissipating. So we know what's happening is that decision-making capability is sitting in front of lines of businesses for the first time ever. And what we find are the lines of businesses are constantly looking at their book of business and saying, well, how do we drive impact as soon as possible? So what's happening today is you can go into a chief marketing officer, tell them about a remarketing or a marketing automation solution, and they make a decision like that. And so today what we're also finding is not only are they making those decisions faster, their propensity to actually pilot that particular product is a lot faster, and decision making is a lot faster as well. So you have folks for the first time ever who are corporate citizens observing processes, observing problems, then breaking out of those corporations, starting companies, and coming back and selling it back to the corporates. The only thing is you need to find that repeatable process, and once you've discovered that, then your sales accelerate.
Okay, so before we touch onto the future, is this exciting for salespeople, or is this crazy scary for them? Because clearly there's going to be some disruption here in the sales industry. For salespeople and sales professionals listening to this, should we be get excited about the change, or is they just going to wipe out a whole bunch of sales jobs and this podcast isn't going to have an audience anymore?
Well, I think it should be absolutely exciting. And the reason why is sales has always been approached from a perspective of a company. We are not trying to change the existing sales force. We're simply trying to introduce a new methodology that improves upon what's the foundation today. I'm not so bullish to say that we'll replace the traditional model. However, I think we are going to accelerate it and augment it in a way that's never been done before. And today, if you look at what happens, the typical restrictions that apply to a particular sales professional is that you have an account today, and that account is yours for the year. You sell whatever you can, and a year later, that account gets taken away from you. And the challenge with that is that was great because you're a mercenary. You're going in and you're closing deals and you're getting paid commission, and then you're moving on. However, what our data is telling us, and if there's a whole industry that exists around it, is customer success is really the key now. So with all of this SaaS technology coming in, not only selling the deal, but making sure that that particular product gets deployed is where the value lies.
And just why is that for a second? Again, I want to raise the business acumen of the audience. I'm assuming this is down to there's less one-off capital deals and it's more of a SaaS model over time. Is that the reason why customer success is now, clearly it should always be important, but it's financially and revenue more important than ever? Am I on the right tracks with that?
Absolutely. So what happens today is you will have somebody that sells a 3-year deal up front, and the company's baseline that forecast to say 3 years from now, we should actually come back and see a 25% increase on that deal, hopefully. Well, if you have the traditional model where the sales professional sold the deal and then leaves, typically corporates don't know what was promised within that structure of the deal. And 3 years later, you find out that you may have sold a $3 million deal, but they only deployed $500,000 of it. So now the 3-year forecast, which you were predicting to be 25% higher, is actually not even 50% deployed. So fundamentally, that was one of the things that we wanted to change. We wanted to say, let's stop changing territories and let's make them better account managers and give them truly the ability to deploy those technologies further, and hence increase the likelihood of future purchases and customers really being successful. So that was sort of the catalyst for it. And today, just to kind of add to that, we really do believe that relationships are the future. So today, the relationships that you have in your personal device, in your mobile phone, is a richer contact than the entire lead gen industry. It's a $30 billion industry. And to me, I'm surprised that a conversion rate of 5 to 7% is considered an industry best. That means you purchase, a set of leads, and there's, 3 to 7% of them that are picking up the phone and saying no, thank you. That's not even getting in the door, right? So we wanted to fundamentally change that part as well, and we realized that sales professionals who built the most amazing relationships have the ability to text a particular person and say, "I've got something that you need to take a look at."
Did you say 30 million or 30 billion then?
So lead gen is a $30 billion industry today.
I'm laughing and I'm smiling because I wanted to clarify that, because that's an incredible number, right? And I'm assuming, and knowing what I know from seeing the behind the scenes of a lot of startups that are dealing with kind of lead gen and essentially using a whole host of SDRs to spam the heck out of an industry and just spam, cold call, cold email. It does two things. One, it pisses people off because you're immediately getting on people's backs. If they remember the company that spammed them, it's very unlikely that they're ever going to do deals with them in the future. So you're almost taking a shortcut and cutting the longevity out of any potential business relationship you could have further down the line, which could be built with nurturing, with content, with the relationships that are already there. But then the other end of this is it just doesn't seem to scale beyond a certain point. You can only have so many people in a room spamming so many email addresses that once you get to, I don't know, you may know kind of data on this, but there can only be 5,000, 10,000 CMOs of reasonably sized companies in America, whatever the number is. You could probably get through that if that's your buyer persona in a week or two with enough people. It seems like a real short-term solution that what you're going to propose here, hopefully, and we'll dive into in deeper. And this really empowers the audience as well, and they're going to like this. the angle that you see the future of the sales professional being. But am I missing something here? Or is this just a short-term money grab strategy that I don't want to bundle all of the lead gen industry into one kind of like whole here, but it seems like an awful lot of them in the B2B space are just spamming people. Am I missing something here, or is it just a short-term strategy?
You're not missing anything. I mean, I think the challenge is that the industry itself is so saturated that these are the conventional routes that are available. Fundamentally, if you even look at something like LinkedIn, and by the way, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. I've used it my entire sales career, and I appreciate the tool. One of the challenges they have today is that we talk to executives all the time, and we ask a simple question: how many pings do you get in a day? And they say they get anywhere from 50 to 100, and we ask them how many do they respond to, and they say 0. So if you have that much influx of reach out happening, and the result of on the other side is 0, that to me is an ineffective strategy at that point. But if you look at what's happening today, I mean, we fundamentally see a company that raises $1 million, and their traditional strategy is, I'm going to take $100,000 and set it aside for lead gen. I'm going to go ahead and hire 200 or put $200,000 for SDRs. And by the way, I don't even barely know what my product does right now and how that are going to absorb it. To me, that's a big pain point. So what we fundamentally wanted to do was wanted to give everybody sort of a scale where they can start spending the right amount of money and accelerating their sales. And today, the entire lead gen industry, I mean, we talked to a large cloud provider, and we talked to them, and they were spending about $40,000 a quarter, actually $60,000 a quarter. And they were getting one lead out of the 100 that they were buying 100 lead, one conversion. And that was one person picking up the phone and saying, I'm not a fit, and hanging up. So if you look at that type of money being spent on hope, what they say about hope is not a strategy. So that was one of our inspirations, that we wanted to fix a broken industry from.
So looking forward now to the next kind of 5 years or 3 years, or in fact, even better, if you tell me the time frame that you think this can potentially happen in, how do you see not the average B2B sales professional, but the exceptional B2B sales professional? The people in the audience know who I'm talking about here. Everyone else is striving to become that individual. How do you see them and their day-to-day? Is this they work for one company? Is this that they specifically have an employment contract with one company, but then are almost moonlighting with others and using their relationships to close deals for other people? Do they not work for anyone? Are they self-employed? Are they essentially, for me, to get practical here for a second, me medical devices, it would be me. I'm the urology specialist in Yorkshire. And so I'm the intermediary between all these other organizations that want to sell to the urologists that I've got really good contacts with. And I'm, self-employed sole trader, or however we would define it, depending on kind of where we live. I've given you a lot here to go at, so I'll redefine it. Are salespeople going to become self-employed connectors, or are they going to work for a big organization and then have the ability to communicate and facilitate deals on the side of that?
Yeah, so let me give you sort of a sliding scale on what the future looks like. Actually, it's happening now, and Swarm Sales is driving it. With Swarm Sales, we believe that today the SDR skill set is something absolutely you should attain. If you are making calls and you're able to close deals over the phone, that is an amazing skill set, and it's going to pay dividends for you in the future. So make yourself amazing. That's anywhere from a 2 to 5 year experience, and get out in the field. Once you're in the field, try to switch as many products or learn about as many industries as possible, because you will become better at it. So I think the next evolution after inside sales or the SDR role should be selling in the field for at least 5 years. Once you've amassed that, then we've got an opportunity waiting for you on Swarm Sales. And the reason why that's important is because you've fundamentally learned about new technologies, but you've gained relationships. And remember, the whole thesis of our value proposition is that relationships are where the future is heading. And in our peripheral today, we're already starting to see it. We're finding independent sales professionals, folks that are in mid-30s to late 50s, who've amassed all these relationships, have this amazing Rolodex, and have literally sold millions of dollars to these executives who are saying, I'm now going to become your agent, and you can leverage me on demand to drive these deals or relationships forward and really facilitate a better quality transaction that would appear today. And through that process, something unique happens. To go back to your point, we don't believe that they will ever work for another organization again. As a matter of fact, we're creating entrepreneurs. And what will happen through that spirit is every company will want to work and leverage with you, or leverage you because of your relationships. Because we know that at that point, you're able to drive all these amazing transactions. Today, we're using data to baseline you. And in Swarm Sales' case, the more activity you create on our platform, we're able to create a better profile about that sales professional as well. So we're basically making sure that as more of this activity happens, the more qualified and sought after you are by these companies.
So you're adding a metric to what is almost intangible if you were just following someone around. It's difficult to, I guess. And how do you measure this then? How do you measure whether someone has a good relationship, bad relationship, whether people are liked, whether people are able to facilitate these deals or not?
If you don't mind, let me just kind of give you an overview of what Swarm Sales is. So Swarm Sales is a marketplace that allows companies the ability to activate or lease a sales professional's time on a per account basis. So sales professionals today come on our marketplace. They identify the accounts that they've sold into in the past. They actually tell us who they've sold into, and they will actually give us the detail of the transaction, amount sold, what was the average deal size, what was the cycle, and so on. And they'll also tell us their past work history. We'll validate that through a quick check. And once that's there, we start matching them with the most relevant companies and technologies or solutions that are available. Once they match a solution, they get to review the solutions. And the moment they accept or they find a solution that's a fit, they submit what's called an opportunity back to that particular company. So I'll come back and say, hey, Mr. Customer, or Mr. Company, I see that you have a product that does analytics. I think Visa would be a great solution or a great company for me to position the solution into. At that point, you get a chance to review all my history. You get a chance to see all my metrics on the marketplace, and you get a chance to talk to me. The moment you accept that engagement, 4 milestones appear: introduction, demo, pilot, and close. And as I successfully complete each milestone, I collect a fee as a sales professional. And if I close a deal, I get commission. And today our commissions vary anywhere from 15 to 35%. But the fundamental thing that I wanted to change by developing this marketplace was, I think the incentives today in the sales arena aren't perfectly aligned for sales professionals. And we wanted to first make sure that we wanted to pay them for all the activity they were creating. And then we wanted to pay them commission on top of that. What happens when you introduce milestones into a play is that you get better quality data. Today, I can actually tell that Will's got amazing relationship by how many introductions he can drive into a particular account. If Will can actually go further into doing a demo, a pilot, and then closing deals, I will eventually be able to tell you that using machine learning or AI data, we can tell you that Will's got some pretty amazing relationships, and 9 times out of 10, Will can get you into this account. But something even more amazing happens is when you're collecting that data is now I can keep you on the marketplace by elevating your worth. I can say today you may be $1,000 sales professional, but tomorrow, because you're driving all these introductions, you're now worth $2,000. You're worth $3,000. You can now set your own price. And that's never been done before.
For context here, and sorry to be so blunt about this, but this is very likely going to be the moment that a whole ton of the audience heads over to your website. What kind of money are we talking about here? Is this kind of $1,000 for kind of a week's worth of work? Obviously, I know it's massively dependent. The answer is very likely it depends. Or is there an opportunity here to do 6 figures? Is there an opportunity here to do serious revenue?
It's an opportunity to do serious revenue. So let me give you an idea. If you have 10 accounts that you've sold into, I've got 100 companies today on the marketplace that are looking to break into those 10 accounts. And for each one of those accounts that you submit an opportunity for, $1,000 will get placed into an escrow account. So you can do the math really quickly on that. And then there's commission waiting for you on top of that. So our commissions are uncapped, and they start at 15 and they range all the way to 35%. So we're paying you $1,000 for the completed milestones, and then you're collecting the commission on top of that. And today, the more activity you create, the more your profile grows, the more worth you grow. and eventually you can go from being $1,000 to $2,000 a for the set of milestones to $3,000. So we're definitely talking about some serious money. We recently had a six-figure deal close on our marketplace, which we're really excited about because a lot of folks said that it couldn't be done. And in that case, the sales professional made a serious chunk of money. And we know that in that case, the deal actually has a recurring revenue model where the sales professional will also benefit from being able to collect that annuity as well.
Nice. Makes total sense. I wanted to get that in there because that will have got a lot of attention from the audience, and I think this is well worth Sales Nation pondering on and investigating. Going to the website, checking everything else out. And I'm intrigued. Have you got any competitors in this model? Is anyone else thinking like this? I imagine big corporates don't want to do this because that kind of goes against the ownership and control that they've got over people, rightly or wrongly. I'm an entrepreneur. I love the kind of spirit of entrepreneurship and what it allows people to do to leverage the time very directly, as sales should be, to drive revenue and get results. But do you have any competitors on the market? We don't need to name them. And do you have anyone is other people kind of following suit on this?
So we don't have any competitors, but what we're competing against is the traditional, right? We're competing against the traditional industry that exists where companies are throwing a lot of capital at building out sort of the infrastructure of, a head of sales, and then your account managers, and then the inside sales, and then a heavy marketing organization. Today, we are an all-encompassing sales engine. We call ourselves a full-stack sales engine. We actually bring our organic opportunities to the table. We call them opportunities, not leads, because when you engage, they're actually going to drive those deals forward. And today, nobody that we've found is doing anything similar. Plus, the amount of data that we're aggregating, I think we're definitely a lot further ahead than what the traditional industry operates within.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's get down to a real practical side of this now. Perhaps someone's listening to this. Perhaps they are an SDR that just started in field sales, or they're an SDR and they've just got to that role where they're account managing a specific group of tech. Perhaps they're the account manager for IBM, Adobe, Oracle. Clearly, companies that other organizations want to sell into. It seems as they're just as massive beasts that they are. What skills do they need to implement now so that they could be a part of this in 2-5 years' time? What do they need to do with their personal brand? What do they need to do with their image, if at all? How much of an expert do they need to be seen as in the industry? Or is this just down to getting potential decision makers to the golf course and becoming best mates with them? What's the best way to approach all of this? So perhaps we're not taking advantage of it now, but perhaps we're aligning ourselves up for 18 months, 24 months that we can start to look into it.
That's a great question. First of all, I kind of took you through that scale of what it takes to be on the marketplace. However, it could be that you're an amazing networker and an amazing relationship builder, and there's a space for you now on the marketplace. But to go back to your question, to all the SDRs who are prospecting today, I think the biggest thing is put your relationship. Let me rephrase that. The best way that you're going to be successful is to really understand how these large enterprises are structured. Understand, what the processes are. How does the company operate? What initiatives are they focused on? What decision-making capabilities they have in the processes that exist in terms of the hierarchy that's there. How does the legal get involved? How does procurement work? And then really spend time understanding those customers' needs and really become a trusted advisor within those accounts. And if you can do all of that today, you've got an opportunity to jump on swarm sales, because we've got a lot of companies, great companies built by great founders, that are looking to leverage that data to break into those target accounts. So I would say if you're an SDR prospecting and you don't have an opportunity that you can discover, get to know the person, get to know the company, get to know the processes, and I can guarantee you that you're going to do really well on the market, on swarm sales marketplace as well.
Is there an analogy here of perhaps we used Oracle as a random example here? If we know loads of people within the account, clearly it's a beast. So there's different verticals within there that we'd have to infiltrate, get to know, build a reputation within, build that know, like, and trust. But is there an analogy here of perhaps that is the professional sports athlete, and then we're a manager who can perhaps feed things to them when appropriate, different sponsorship deals, different endorsement deals, things like that?
I don't think I caught that question. Could you repeat it, please?
Sure. So I'm trying to think of an analogy to paint a picture in the audience minds here. Is an analogy of this if Oracle would be a huge account that people on the Swarm marketplace want to get in front of? Would that be perhaps like a professional athlete, and then we are the management, the agent, or whoever that is? There's sponsorship deals. If that professional athlete is a golfer, Nike want them to use our clubs, and we're the middle person who is introducing deals or opportunities to this athlete, to this Oracle that is appropriate for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So maybe I can add another viewpoint. So let's say even you. So today, the biggest thing is that, yes, we are creating an advocate who is able to better represent the product into that particular account because you understand what are the key focus areas. So let's talk about Oracle today. Oracle, I've had the fortune of coming in through Oracle. I spent a lot of my tenure. It's an amazing sales culture. And I can tell you today that Oracle itself is shifting from traditional on-premise market or a company to now being a cloud-based company where a lot of the software and the hardware exists for majority of the companies to start absorbing and consuming. And today, what they're fundamentally interested in is understanding, different types of solutions that make their platform better. Now, they're a culture that obviously tends to innovate internally a lot. However, if you are somebody that can come in and say, this is something that will make your infrastructure faster, better, then obviously that's something that puts that particular company or that capability on the radar a lot faster. And that's the case with everybody today. So if you look at companies like Visa, eBay, PayPal, they are innovators. They're doing a lot of innovation internally, and they have a lot of resources that are working constantly to build infrastructure or capability internally. What happens is when you actually have an agent that understands their initiatives really well and is able to come back and align a solution and highlight the problem that solution solves, that is something that's very well received, and that's the mark of a great salesman, right? Because you're not selling, you're solving the problem at that time. So one of the things that we fundamentally want on our marketplace are folks who actually have the ability to take a solution that's on our marketplace, observe it, understand it, decipher a use case, and then go align with the enterprise and represent that solution appropriately back to them, increasing the likelihood of getting that past the introduction phase to pilot, and then obviously absorbing it into production and getting a deal.
Makes total sense. The reason I like this, the reason why I'm keen to work with you and do other things on the background of all of this is twofold. One, salespeople should have been this the whole time. Clearly, there's bad eggs within our space, but it sets you up as a consultant, right? You can take the word salesperson out of the scenario. If you were a self-employed consultant and you had a group of companies that you worked with, and then you knew that they could add value to a specific company, you could go in, you could kind of translate what the startup, what this small organization can do for this bigger organization, whether it's technology, whether it's people, whether it's development of leads, whatever the technology is. You've got that opportunity then as a consultant, as an expert within that vertical, to go back and forth around that conversation. And I feel B2B salespeople should have been this the whole time along. Whether there should be SDRs setting up calls for these individuals is a debate that we can have another time. But it also gets rid of all the people who are sucking value from conversations, the people who are spamming, the people who are trying to rip people off, because you can only do that to an account once. You burn that account and they'll never do business with you again. And everything that we're talking about here is built on the basis of trust, built on the basis of long-term relationships, built on the basis that perhaps you work with someone in one account, they move to another one, and they want to take the software that you facilitated the sale on over to that next company. And so it scales out wider than just perhaps the kind of the vertical motion of I see this opportunity and sell it into one account allows. So it kind of wraps up a whole bunch of problems that salespeople have, or that people perceivedly have about salespeople. It gets rid of that negative stereotype of the used car salesperson, and perhaps that will always be the case in used car sales, but it gets rid of it in the B2B world. Is there anything I'm missing here, Ankur? Is there anything else that this is doing other than kind of cleaning up our reputation and putting more money in our pockets and giving us flexibility. Is there any other benefits to your platform, but then this model as a whole as well?
Well, first of all, you hit the nail on the head that today sales is seen as gimmicky, as extremely intrusive and car salesy. And fundamentally, I personally believe that sales professionals possess a skill set, which is that we are able to translate what a thought process is and disseminate it back to the target audience and highlight the simple use case that can solve your problem. So we help influence decisions in a way that's never been done. So that power is quite astounding. And on that power, revenue is generated, companies are built, and companies are sold, and companies go public. So I'm a big proponent of what sales professionals bring to the table. And one of the things that you'll notice on Swarm Sales is we will never refer to them as a salesperson or a sales rep. We actually constantly refer to them as sales professional because we do believe they are professionals and they've amassed the skill set that can drive a lot of value to the table. But the biggest thing, as I kind of as you pointed out, is that it's amazing what happens when you pluck a sales professional out of an account and you drop him into another account. Today we say as a company, great, that guy's a revenue generator. Let's go ahead and put him into another organization and drive revenue. But we don't think about the damage that causes with that particular account that sales professional just plucked out of. I've had multiple accounts where I've sold technology or solutions into, and next year the territories were changed and those companies came back and said, is there any way we can keep you? Is there any way we can work with you? And there was a part of me that did want to work with them because we knew exactly what we had sold to them, and we knew exactly what were the initiative, and we knew exactly how to align and make those initiatives successful. And I'll tell you, Will, I mean, every time I check back in, if we were no longer serving that account, 8 times out of 10, that technology was not appropriately deployed. And that's damaging. That's damaging to our reputation as sales professionals, and it's damaging to the company that's selling the product, because then people go, well, it never served the purpose that I bought it for, and let alone I didn't have the people that could help me be successful in using it. So today we want to put that agent back into the mix and really let them drive that behavior. And instead of compensating them for being just a mercenary who sells products, we now want to compensate them for maintaining those relationships and being really good at being able to solve that problem. But the one question I want to make sure that all the sales professionals ask every single time is, what else can I do for you? Right? Today, by plucking them away, we don't give them that ability. So that was one of the biggest things that I think you'll see a lot of change happen in the future with.
Amazing stuff. I'm totally on board with this. I'm excited and this is one of the reasons why I chose sales as a podcast topic, because I see this and multiple other things and I guess it all ties together. I see there being less salespeople out there. I see them being industry experts, being somewhat known. The example I always use is if I'm selling to urologists in my territory here in Yorkshire, there's only 40 urologists that need to know, like, and trust me. It's not like I need to have an audience of 20,000 people. Each of these episodes gets 25, 30,000 downloads kind of on the audio side of things. It's not like you need that audience. You only need those 40 people to know, like, trust, to know that you're an expert, to have integrity with them, to have that relationship where you go for a pint with them occasionally and have a chat about stuff other than work. And what you're proposing here and the potential future of selling on the back of this is that it doesn't just facilitate that to happen more often, it encourages it, right? And that's got to be a good thing for the. I'm being careful of what I say here, but I don't think I should be. You've got the shitty sales jobs, which anyone can do. It's a job you fall into. It's a job you do for 18 months, and then you go, "This is terrible. I'm off doing something else." Then you've got I don't know how you describe them, but it was like me in medical devices here in the UK and in the US. Medical devices is perceived as a high value sales role, as an important sales role. I know for me, it was kind of 20% selling and 80% teaching surgeons how to use surgical equipment. And in the endoscopy equipment I was selling, it was all kind of 100 grand to a couple of million each deal that I did throughout the year. So clearly I want to drag the audience from those sales roles into these sales roles. I think that's where the future of sales lies regardless. These are all going to be replaced by Facebook chatbots and stuff like that eventually. And you're smiling, so I'm assuming that you agree with some of this. But when we're in these sales roles, I think everything that we're discussing here, it facilitates and it encourages the correct business moves more than anything else. And that's what is going to give it long term. That's what's going to give it resilience to any change in the market. So I'm really enjoying this conversation. And with that, I've got one final question, something that I ask everyone that comes on the show. That is, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give him to help him become better at selling?
I think the one piece of advice that I would give myself is to ask more questions. When I was younger in my sales career, I think I was a lot more afraid. And I think back to what the value of those questions would have been and how they would have changed the course of my sales career if I would have just asked those questions. And I think one of the things I'll tell you is that we tend to give titles a lot of value, and they are. However, if you are bringing a solution to the table and that solution absolutely solves that problem, put that title aside and think of yourself as an advocate for that company or that customer, and ask the question of saying, how can I help solve your problem? And when you do, it's amazing what happens from that perspective. So the only thing I would have told myself is to be a little bit more brave and ask a few more questions in those meetings where I sat a little bit more quietly.
Nice. And just to double down on this for a second, do you have any books that you'd recommend on questions, any sales books or anything like that, or any resources or anything else so the audience can perhaps take some of this and run with it?
Sure. So a couple of things. I'm a big fan of Mark Roberge, who wrote the book. I think it's called The Sales Acceleration Formula. And I just think he's a great guy, and he's built an amazing story. Mark, if you're listening, give me a call. We talk. So that's one. From our perspective, we're disseminating a lot of this writing, and we're obviously plugging away on our blogs as well. So I'd encourage the audience, if they have time, to come visit swarmsales.com and check out some of our writing as well. And then obviously, I'm a big fan of spin selling as well. So, reading that always helps as well.
Amazing stuff. Well, I will link to all of that in the show notes of this episode over at salesmanpodcast.com. With that, Ankur, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your energy. I want to thank you for kind of bringing this to the forefront. It's really interesting. And as I said, one of the reasons of the podcast is to document the change in sales. If it was a crazy, stagnant, boring industry, there'd be no point in doing it at all, because one book written 20 years ago, spin selling as an example, would still be the only reason and the only thing we need to do right now for success. Clearly that isn't the case. So I'm interested, and we'll have you back on in kind of 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and see how things progress. But with all that, I want to thank you for your time, your energy on this, and for joining us on the Salesman Podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and really appreciate you letting us talk about the future of sales. And I'm waiting to see you on the marketplace as well. We'd love to have you.
As we're going through this conversation, I'm thinking to myself, I've probably got relationships with the wrong end of things. I've got relationships with all the smaller companies that want to infiltrate the bigger companies versus the other way around. And the audience can bookmark this in your brains. It might be an interesting case study. It might be an experiment that we can do. And if I fall flat on my face, it'll be an interesting piece of content nevertheless. So maybe we'll give it a go.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for having me. And to all the audience, we look forward to seeing you on Swarm Sales. We're building something really unique, and we would love to surround you with the data that really tells everybody what you're worth and really brings you into the future of sales. So thank you again.